Brynn Karstens. 160, the number of confirmed kills by Petty Officer Chris Kyle, the subject of the film American Sniper during the Iraq War. For a long time, women have been viewed as weaker and less suited to the military than men are. But is that really the case? 309, the number of confirmed kills by Major Lyudmila Pavlichenko, a female sniper for the Soviet Union during World War II. We all know Tyler Merkins, a senior this year, will be going into the military after graduation. Women should be able to continue to serve in combat roles in the U.S. military. First, I will be telling you about the history of American women in wartime. Next, I will be telling you some of the U.S.'s policies. And last, I will tell you the story of a female soldier. Let's begin by looking into the past of our country. Historically, women have served in some capacity in our nation's military since the Revolutionary War. During the Revolutionary War, they contributed greatly to the cause. Different women of all different backgrounds came together in this time of need. Some of them, mostly in serving capacities, enabled the upstart nation to produce an army that was capable of defeating the British, which was the reigning superpower of the world at the time. Not just nursing, cooking, and cleanliness affected the Army's ability to function. Housewives found themselves running businesses, farming, and taking care of the household in the absence of the patriarchs. And by doing so, they enabled the economy to keep going, ensuring that their boys could fight without worrying about their lives crumbling behind them. This changed later in the war. One of the things that women did was contribute not just in a serving capacity, but some also showed exceptional dedication to the cause. Christy N. Camark, a military manpower analyst with over 15 years of experience, in the paper Women in Combat, Issues for Congress, published in December of 2016, states that Margaret Cochrane Corbin was the very first woman to ever receive a military pension from the United States Congress. This was for an injury she received while defending a fort from the British during the Revolutionary War. Women were still not allowed into the military in a formal capacity until the creation of the Navy Nurse Corps in 1901. This stayed the same until World War II rolled around, though they were still purposely put into non-combatant units. This remained true even after the creation of the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, as well as the opening of the Naval Reserve to female membership. However, that did not stop more than 500 women from laying down their lives for the cause, and more than 80 others being held as prisoners of war. By the end of World War II, 400,000 women had dedicated their time to their country. At a point in history, the way women supported the military changed, and they were allowed to join as non-combatants. During World War II, many groups came to include women. One of these groups was the Civil Air Patrol, as well as the Red Cross, and the Army and Navy Nurse Corps. Later in the decade, the government saw a decline in enlistment and sought to fix this problem. According to Ann W. Chapman, a military research historian with a PhD in her field, in the paper Mixed Gender Basic Training, published in 2008, it all started back in the 70s. I introduce you to TRADOC, the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command Program. The goal of this program was to develop leadership and skill in their soldiers. The Army at this time had become an all-volunteer force. The draft no longer needed, though it is still here today. Later in this decade, Congress and the Department of Defense decided that to keep up the enlistment, women would be permitted to join. This was a groundbreaking step, though the military was still woefully unprepared for this change. In 1982, a rule was created to define close combat, which women were not allowed to engage in, and to specify the specific positions that women were not allowed to have. Later, in 1989, units were deployed to Panama, and these were integrated units, meaning both men and women. And after that deployment, legislation was introduced that would study the possibility of women in the armed forces having to bear arms. This legislation did not go far, and it was quickly killed in Congress. After the Persian Gulf War, the U.S. Secretary of Defense decreed that the Air Force and the Navy study the possibility of women joining in combat units. As of 2004, they were still denied entry into infantry, armory, combat forces, and special ops units. This changed in January of 2016, when women were finally permitted to join in combat and fighting positions. and they have worked hard since, though there are still many boundaries to be broken. Even before the rules were changed, women risked their lives on the battlefield. In this new era of empowerment, more and more women have served their country. There are many stories of brave women in the military. Colonel Ellen Herring, the director of the Combat Integration Initiative Unit, in her paper, What Women Bring to the Fight, which was published in 2013, tells the story of one outstanding female soldier. Sergeant Leanne Hester, along with 9 others with her squadron, was trailing a military convoy in 2005 when they were ambushed by over 50 Iraqi insurgents. During this, Sergeant Hester and her squad stepped up and managed to flank and clear 3 enemy trenches, killing 3 of their attackers in the process. This was still at the time when women were not allowed to be in combat units, though some ladies still found themselves in the thick of the fight anyways. She was later awarded the Silver Star for her actions in combat, the first woman to do so the first woman to be such honored since World War II. Sergeant Hester is a shining example of what is possible with women in the armed forces today. First, I told you about the history of American women in wartime. Next, I told you about the history of the U.S. and its policies. And finally, I told you the story of a female soldier. Ultimately, women should still be able to serve in combat roles in the U.S. military. Major Pavlichenko may have been a woman, but she did not let that stop her from becoming one of the deadliest snipers of World War II, as well as the deadliest female sniper in all of history. Whether a man or a woman, a soldier is still a soldier. 6.